This is the second one of our technical lectures, so about writing an introduction. Writing an introduction means introducing two things. First, the topic of the paper, your opinion. What are you writing about? But second, and as importantly, you need to introduce your structure and tell the reader what topics you're going to hit to justify your opinion or your point of view. When you're writing an introduction, you need to think of a funnel. You start with a general observation and then you progressively lead your reader to the specific question or observation that you're dealing with. So to your specific thesis statement. Here are some examples of opening statements for academic papers. Comedy is an art form with a long history. That's a very general statement that's very hard to argue with. What you're doing is that you're creating common ground with your reader. Alternatively, you can say something like heart disease is the leading cause of death in the US. For a statement like that, you might want to put a little citation after it because you want to show that you've done your research and that you're not just pulling this out of the hat. This is actually fact-based. But once you have that reference there, nobody's going to argue with you. That's a general statement, a general observation. Once again, creating common ground with the reader. After you do that, you want to lead your reader towards your specific question or issue. So the comedy one, you want to follow up with, however, modern comedy differs in many ways from its historical counterpart. Alternatively, for the heart disease opener, you could follow up with something like lifestyle factors play a big role in the genesis and etiology of heart disease. In both of these statements, what you're going to observe is that I've led you in a certain direction. With an opening statement, there are plenty of follow-ups that you can use that will lead you in different directions. What you need to do is choose the one that's going to lead the reader to the thesis statement that you're going to be dealing with in your paper. So with a follow-up statement like, however, modern comedy differs from its historical counterpart, already, before you even know what the next statement is, you know that it's going to have something to do with a historical comparison of comedic styles. In the heart disease example, immediately I've led you towards lifestyle factors, right? I could have led you towards anything. I could have talked about surgery. I could have talked about cholesterol. I could have talked about anything, but I specifically led you towards lifestyle so that you know that what I'm going to follow up with has something to do with lifestyle. Now, let's take a look. Once you've led your reader, you want to hit them with your thesis statement, okay? So, for the comedic example, the purpose of this paper is to compare comedic styles from the 1990s to those from the 1890s. I could have chosen anything. I could have compared from, the 1990s to today. I could have done what I wanted, but this is my thesis statement, and my reader, based on the two previous statements, was able to anticipate something along these lines. That's a good introduction. Now let's look at our second example for the heart disease line. In this paper, we will examine the role of psychosocial stress in the development of heart disease. I was talking about lifestyle. Now I'm talking about psychosocial stress. As a reader, when I see that, I know that I've been led through this line. So now we're talking about things like psychology and social aspects of heart disease. Writing a thesis statement. Now if we go back to our previous examples, okay, the purpose of this paper is to compare comedic styles. In this paper, we will examine the role of psychosocial stress. These are different ways of framing a thesis statement, but if you get stuck and you're not quite sure how to frame it, how to present your thesis statement, there is a very formulaic, almost mathematical way of going about it. You use the following formula. The purpose of this paper, and you should get familiar with synonyms for words like purpose, goal, point, aim, object, okay? The point of this paper is To evaluate or examine or discuss or explore, one of those words, okay? The topic of interest. So, the point of this paper is to evaluate, to compare, to explore. Insert topic here. Remember that I'd said that in the introduction you need to introduce both the topic and the structure. Now let's go through our examples again here. For the comedy example, those 3 sentences effectively introduce the topic of the paper. Comedy is an art form with a long history. However, modern comedy differs in many ways from its historical counterpart. The purpose of this paper is to compare comedic styles from the 1990s to comedy from the 1890s. Okay. Once this is done, you need to follow up immediately with an introduction of your structure. Once again, this is basically mathematical. To do so, we will first examine X. Then we will discuss Y. Finally, we will explore Z. In our second example, it's the same thing. I'll let you read it. Heart disease is the leading cause of death in the U.S. Lifestyle factors play a big role in the genesis and etiology of heart disease. In this paper, we will examine the role of psychosocial stress in the development of heart disease. Follow up immediately with your structure. To do so, we will first examine X and then examine Y. Finally, we will examine Z. This is how you introduce a structure. You need to decide what topics you're going to hit, and those topics, you insert them. Instead of X, you're talking about your topic. Instead of Y, you're talking about, this other aspect. Instead of Z, you're talking about a third aspect. X, Y, and Z here all refer to whatever topics you're going to hit to justify your point of view. Okay, so, for example, if we stick with the heart disease example, X, let's say X is job stress. Y is family stress. Z or Z, major life events. What would that look like? It looks like this. We will first examine the effect of job stress and family stress on the development of heart disease. We will also examine the effects of major life events on disease development. This is a clean, clear introduction of your structure. Sometimes people recommend that you write your introduction after you've written your paper. What I recommend is that you write the part of your introduction that introduces your structure after you've written your paper. I think that you can write the part that introduces the topic first. But sometimes you don't know exactly what pieces of evidence you're going to use, what cargo you're going to put in the boat, okay? And once you know that, it's easy to go back up to your introduction and to fill in the X, Y, and Z parts of introducing your structure. In the next lecture, we're going to jump right into talking about how to write a conclusion. We're skipping the body for the time being because it's important to know how to open your paper and how to close it. Those are the 2 most important elements of your structure. After that, we're going to move into how to write the body.